Our keynote speaker for the evening is Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonzales, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and a fellow Taylorite. Yeah. I wonder if he still remembers the whole song. I won't challenge you on that this afternoon.
Let's have a bet. And I will leave my price.
Okay, well, we will leave it there. Dr. Gonzales was educated in St. Vincent and the Grenadines at the Culinary Roman Catholic School and at the St. Vincent Boys Grammar School. He later completed a bachelor's degree in economics at the University of the West Indies, obtaining several noteworthy accolades, including President of the Debating Society and President of the Guild of Undergraduates. In 1971, he obtained a master's in government from the University of the West Indies. In 1974 and 1981, he obtained a PhD in government and a degree of the Auto Barrister at the University of Manchester, England, and Grayson, London, respectively. Our guest speaker became the deputy political leader of the Unity Labour Party in 1994. The ULP, a merger of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Labour Party, and the Movement for National Unity, MNU, a political party which at the time of the merger, Dr. Gonzales was the leader, won the St. Vincent and the Grenadines general elections held in March 28, 2001. At the time of the elections, he has since been elected to political leadership of the ULP, and as such he became the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines on that same date, March 28, 2001. He has remained Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines since then, winning the elections again in December 2005 and 2010. While pursuing his political career and prior to his becoming the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Gonzales practiced law extensively and successfully before the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court in a wide range of matters, but particularly in the fields of constitutional law, administrative law, matrimonial law, real property law, law of tort generally, and the law of contract. He has researched, written, and published extensively on a range of matters touching upon the Caribbean, African trade unionism, comparative political economy, and developmental issues, among other topics. Among his two latest publications are History and the Future, a Caribbean Perspective, which was published in 1994, and The Politics of Our Caribbean Civilization, Essays and Speeches, published in 2001. It is my pleasure. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Dr. Gonzales.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Distinguished Vice Chancellor, members of Cabinet and Parliament, Jamaica, Barbados, and anywhere else in the Caribbean. My brothers, Shirley and Beckles, and the leaders of the University of the West Indies and other leaders across the region. Lord Gifford, very good to see you, my brother. The first time I saw him, I told him was in 1972, when he introduced the great African revolutionary from Guinea-Bissau, Amilcar Cabral, at the Free Trade Hall in Manchester. It was a wonderful evening. I want to greet the students. I want to greet everyone who is here from the Caribbean community, our Rastafarian brothers and sisters. Very good to see you, brethren and sisterin. I just want you to know, brothers and sisters of the Rastafarian movement, that across the region you could be making a demand, which I've had effected in St. Vincent since 2005. I worked with Meles and Ali, where I abolished visas for Ethiopians to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And my brother Meles abolished visas for Vincentians to go to Ethiopia. So that if you meet a Vincentian Rastafari brother or sister who said that he can't get to Ethiopia, it's only because he doesn't have the passage. But it's easier, once he has the passage, it's easier for him to go to Ethiopia than to go to America or Canada or Britain, because of those who require visas. I want to say to you too, I went there with an official delegation which included 4 Rastafarian brothers. And in 2005, I took from St. Vincent, one of the Rasta brothers I took was a farmer. So I told him to take 3 breadfruit plants because he didn't have any in Ethiopia. If Captain Bly can bring them to St. Vincent, I could take them to Shashamani. And that's where I plant them. I go to brother and sister in Shashamani to take them. I'll give you this joke. When we arrived in Britain, the British customs saw, the leaves of a breadfruit plant look a little bit like ganja leaves, the young ones. So they received the Prime Ministerial assurance that they're the offspring of Captain Bly and not something else, not Cannabis sativa ale. I'm happy to be here at the University of the West Indies yet again. I spent 7 years here at Mona, 5 as a student and 2 as a lecturer. And I loved every minute of it. Jamaica gave me my first 2 children. Jamaican woman. I have 2 children, 2 boys up front. I did 3 more later on. Because we have to make sure that there's a continuation of the species. I want to say how impressed I am about the changes which have taken place here. It was the last year, 3 or so years ago, and I was joking, telling my brother, PVC Shirley, that he's talking to me about the remarkable project which we're doing in St. Vincent, where we have mowed down a lot of mountains, 4 of them, filled 4 valleys, across the Spanner River, move 134 middle-income houses, and a church and a cemetery. And I did it all, I started it without any money. And I'm just 1 year away from finishing it. It's going well. So I jokingly told my brother Shirley that if David and Solomon can build the temple to house the Ark of the Covenant, and if 2 other gentlemen, one here at Mona, the Vice Chancellor, and Beckles in Barbados can rebuild these campuses. You notice I put them in the line of David and Solomon. Why can't I do it in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? I want to say that I cut my political teeth here in Jamaica. This year is now 45 years that I'm a political activist. I have seen the changes over the last 45 years in this Caribbean. I've either been close up, watching, or being an active participant. I'm now the second longest serving Prime Minister in the region. And as a good Catholic, the only problem I have with what Pope Benedict XVI has done was to retire, because in the taverns across St. Vincent and the Grenadines, people may be saying, well, if the Pope can do it, why can't Ralph? But I'm not ready yet to follow Pope Benedict. We have some time still, and important work is to be done. Anyway, I live to tell the tale, despite the slings and arrows of misfortune. You have confidence in the people, commune well with them, and your God. And you don't bother with anything else. And that's why reparations is going to succeed. So I want to talk about that this evening.
Reparation is a must, brethren.
And I want to thank the University of the West Indies Press and Professor Beckles for inviting me to do a review. But I'm taking the opportunity to do not a review simpliciter, but to do a review essay, which means I will draw on other sources, because I want the material that I put together to be a popularization of what Hillary has written, and with some other things, because every single one of us has to add to this debate. It's a long paper, but I'm not going to read it word for word. I'll speak to it. And hopefully at the end of it, I'll be able to convince you, and for you to become evangelists to the cause, because this is a great cause. And great causes have never been won by doubtful men and women. So, here we go. Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, principal of the Cave Hill campus of UWI, has authored a path-breaking book entitled Britain's Black Debt: Reparations for Caribbean Slavery and Native Genocide. But thus far, we have spoken about Caribbean slavery. We also have to put native genocide on the agenda.
I like that addition, you know. I like it.
It was published earlier this year by UWI Press here at Mona. This 292-page volume is conveniently divided, as you have heard from Lord Gifford, in two parts. Part 1 introduces the discussion of the principles and politics of reparations and lays out the relevant historical data which grounded the demand for reparations. Part 2 carefully examines the case for reparations and details the meandering fate of the reparations movement in recent years. Beckles writes in a refreshing, compelling style. His narrative conveys the hard-nosed historian's affinity for facts from which truths are inexorably derived. His conceptual clarity on the subject of reparations for slavery and native genocide reflects a razor-sharp mind, which is among the best globally in his trade of historical writing and research. On the subject matters at hand, Beckles writes with commitment to truth and justice. He evinces to a passionate intensity which brings out the best in a seasoned child of our Caribbean civilization. Not as a propagandist, but as an experienced student of Caribbean historiography, who has a duty to speak for his native antecedents and enslaved forebears, and to seek just recompense for their descendants. To borrow the language of George Lamin, our revered seer and creative genius, Beckles glows with a brightness which is illuminating, not blinding. Everton Weeks was cricket's master craftsman, with whom Beckles collaborated in his autobiography. Beckles in his Britain's Black Death puts on a display of self-mastery, an important virtue, in seeking to right historical wrongs, which confirms him as the Caribbean's most scholarly, impressive, and influential public intellectual. Beckles' book, which we are launching this evening, is a multidisciplinary masterpiece. It is history, philosophy, political economy, cultural authoritativeness, international jurisprudence, and literature of the creative imagination. Its analyses are wide and deep, particular and general. The book touches both the individual and the collective in a gripping manner, which connects tellingly with the mind and the spirit. The significance of this book cannot be overstated. It is historical writing of the highest quality. It is most valuable for public education and the process of popular conscientization. And it is a foundation stone for coordinated public policy in the Caribbean to advance the claim formally for reparations. To be sure, much of the actual data in Beckles' book is already available elsewhere, but he marshals known information with freshness and additional insight in the specific service of the case for reparations. Still, though, abundant new data have been assembled to bolster further the historical and contemporary demand for appropriate recompense for Caribbean slavery and native genocide. From the outset, Beckles makes it plain that he is not on an anti-British crusade in his quest for reparations from Britain for its central role in the crimes of slavery and native genocide in Britain's Caribbean colonies. Explicitly, Beckles states, quote, "The Caribbean reparation case against Britain is not based on any concept or intention to participate in political confrontation with the British society or its government. A confrontational approach to reparation does not hold reconciliation as a primary objective. Reconciliation, however, is the necessary outcome of the claim for reparations, seeking as it does to establish a spirit of mutual respect and obligation between the British state and the descendants of enslaved Africans who continued to be victimized a century after legislative emancipation in 1838. Goes further. Quote, "It is important for British society to acknowledge that its development as a nation state, the transformation of its economy to sustainable industrialization, and its global standing as a superpower among nations were founded upon a crime against humanity in a form of racial chattel enslavement of African bodies and the global trafficking of millions of these bodies for 300 years. Acknowledging and counting for wrongs is deeply enshrined in British law and society. And as such, the need to engage British society with a reparations discourse is consistent with national, cultural, and intellectual norms. Indeed, the British intellectual and moral traditions should insist upon it. Far from seeing reparations claims as confrontational then, British society should champion the cause as an expression of respect and of celebration of the finest aspects of its judicial culture." Unquote. So, the quest is not for confrontation. Nevertheless, the case for reparations has to be made as robustly as the circumstances demand. The unanswerable case has to be grounded in historical and contemporary facts, morality, politics, and law. Our people and governments must be mobilized in unity in a massive campaign on the matter. We must galvanize all possible allies in this great cause, cognizant of the fact that no great cause has ever been won by doubtful men and women. Our overall strategy and tactics must be impeccable and in accordance with international norms. We must act with urgency, yet be patient, because it is and will be a rough, hard road to travel, even though justice is on our side. Beckles' book highlights all this and more in its advisories. I want to address first the matter of genocide, native genocide in the Windward Islands. Hilary Beckles devotes one chapter of his book explicitly on the subject of native genocide under the eye-catching heading, Exterminate the Savages, Genocide in the Windwards. Succinctly and compellingly, Beckles states the core of the issue thus, quote, the British entered the Eastern Caribbean in the early 17th century with a colonizing policy